The flood season started much earlier and lasted a lot longer than usual, and the early rains fell with exceptional intensity, causing widespread destruction to crops and houses. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. In 2002, China was exposed to a range of extreme natural phenomena. Today we tackle the devastating floods that completely overwhelmed the Hubei Province this day in weather history. So, the central China province of Hubei has certainly been the center of attention for the past year and a half as the home to the city of Wuhan and the alleged birthplace of COVID-19. But prior to this region is often in the news for its brutal flood seasons. But while floods often plagued China in summer, the 2002 deluge raised fears of a repeat of 1998, when the most devastating downpour in half a century killed more than 4,000 people and inundated 240,000 square kilometers of farmland in what is known as China's Rice Bowl. In that year, floods hit and destroyed parts of China. About 300,000 soldiers were dispatched to help out in disaster relief, but some did not have the proper professional skills or equipment, and that turned out to be more bothersome than benefit in the end. These 2002 floods affected 4 provinces and, according to statistics issued in early September by the China Ministry of Civil Affairs that year, they claimed a total of 1,532 lives across China and affected, to varying degrees of intensity, an estimated 190 million people. Of a total of 25 regions affected by the flash floods, 7 provinces in central and southeast China and 1 megacity were initially categorized as having suffered the most serious losses and damages and were targeted for support in an international appeal. It started early, when China's central provinces of Yunnan, Hubei, and Shanxi had been heavily hit by rain since the beginning of April, and some of the tributaries of China's longest river had already risen to levels that were raising alarms. Getting out ahead of the ensuing chaos, local governments temporarily evacuated more than 2.5 million people from several flood-prone areas. But this was different in that this deluge had even affected the normally arid northwestern region of Xinjiang, where officials reported some of the worst flooding in decades. Welcome to year 2 of this podcast. Right now, you're listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider. But there's also the daily podcast video short. They're shot right here in my podcast recording studio, so you get that perspective. But oftentimes, they will include visuals from that day's event, from when it happened, in weather history. So after listening to the full story, go check out the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. So, what happened? Faster than usual melting of mountain snow in some relatively impoverished regions wildly exacerbated the flooding, which caused more than $2.5 million in damage in the Turpan prefecture alone, while areas about 560 miles southwest of Beijing were submerged under 5 feet of water. Before this event and afterward, China has been striving to limit the potential of floods that bring chaos and destruction to the country. The government has banned tree felling and urged farmers to plant trees and pushed ahead with projects like the Mammoth Three Gorges Dam, which Beijing says will help control floods. You clear-cut trees or lose them to fires, and you have nothing to prevent or even slow down the rush of water in cases like this. We see this all over the world in places like Brazil, where barbaric clear-cutting of Amazon rainforest has led to disaster, and in California, where seasonal wildfires have also resulted in similar outcomes. Floods are easily the most costly weather event to any country. Storms come and go, but water that rides up and takes over dry land is a totally different animal. One that can never be tamed, only cleaned up afterwards. Some say they might still be cleaning up in Hubei after what happened this day in weather history. Tomorrow is June 10th, and what started quietly with an area of high pressure to the north of the United Kingdom maintaining a dry, cool easterly flow changed. And then things got an awful lot worse from there. We will look back to the year 2007, when the whole of the United Kingdom was hit with a relentless, perfect storm of circumstances that led to widespread flooding. It's on This Day in Weather History with me, your host, Chris May.